In those moments, his nurse Ayman was by his side, soothing his small heart and wiping away his tears. Since that day, she never ceased to shower him with love and care, striving to fill the void left by his mother. She remained by his side, serving him until he reached the age of 25 and got married. After the revelation descended, she didn't hesitate to make the greatest sacrifice for the sake of Islam. She held a great place in the heart of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, and she overwhelmed him with such affection and tenderness that he later said of her, "She is my mother after my mother." When they returned to Mecca, his grandfather Abdul-Muttalib took him into his guardianship and wouldn't leave his side. He wouldn't even sit down for food unless his grandson was with him. Abdul-Muttalib was the master of his people, so his cushion was placed in front of the Kaaba, and even his own sons wouldn't sit on it. However, his grandson Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, at 6 years old, used to sit on it. He wouldn't allow anyone else to sit on it, and if anyone tried to prevent him, he would say to him, "Leave my son, for by Allah, he has a great future ahead of him." At a young age, he witnessed how his grandfather managed Mecca, and everything he saw was preparing him to be a leader in the future. Abdul-Muttalib would also occasionally entrust him with some tasks and duties. The grandson held immense respect for his grandfather, and the grandfather showered his grandson with affection and mercy. The relationship between them was close. However, this bond didn't last long either, as only 2 years later, he, peace and blessing be upon him, would lose his grandfather as well. Whenever he became attached to someone, Allah took them away from him, one after another, as if Allah was saying to him, "I alone am your support." Throughout his entire life, he would also lose many of his companions. Moreover, he would lose 6 of his 7 children while he was alive. As you will see in every episode of this series, he was to endure endless sorrow and trials, because he tasted every kind of pain and tribulation. He came to understand every hardship his nation goes through, and thus he became the best leader and role model for us. For if he had lived an easy life without trials or hardships, how could he be a role model for the world? All the mercy and affection he received from people in his early years was like the reflection of sunlight in multiple mirrors. But the true source of mercy, Allah Almighty, was removing those mirrors, meaning he was taking away his loved ones one after another. By doing so, he was showing him the true source of mercy, teaching him that every blessing comes from him alone, that he alone is the everlasting, and that if he wills, he keeps whom he wills of his servants, and if he wills, he gathers those who were separated in an everlasting abode in paradise. Through this, Allah was laying the foundations of belief in the hereafter, which He would reveal to him later. If you reflect upon what the Prophet went through at this tender age, you can't help but contemplate deeply. Every detail in his life was by a precise decree from Allah, and every trial and tribulation increased his maturity and steadfastness, because in the future he would be entrusted with a very heavy trust. Since he was an infant, he was not raised in the city, but rather in the desert and plains. Because of this, he possessed a free spirit, was strong of will. As we move to the house where he will live from now on, he has lived in 5 different homes so far. Through these experiences, he learned how to live with different temperaments. Under the care of his grandfather, he witnessed how the city was managed. He didn't have parents, but he was raised by 3 maternal and 3 paternal figures, each with their own temperament and personality. Alongside his mother, there was his wet nurse Halima, and in the position of a father was her husband Haris. His nurse Umm Ayman gave him maternal affection in her own way, while his grandfather Abdul-Muttalib was a father to him in his own special way. Finally, his uncle Abu Talib took him under his wing, and his wife Fatima bint Saad treated him with care and affection just as she treated her own children, never differentiating between them. He received so much love and care that he later described these 3 women, saying, "My mother, after my mother." Nothing in his life was a coincidence. Rather, every stage until he reached the age of 40 was a preparation for the heavy prophecies awaiting him. What lay ahead for him was not easy. From the weight of the revelation and the years of hunger and siege to make him abandon his mission, to the torture of Quraysh in Mecca and the hypocrites in Medina, as well as the harshness of the people of Taif, the day of the trench, when all the Arabs gathered against him, and the countless assassination attempts. To endure all of this, he needed a solid foundation and an unshakable will. Therefore, every detail of his life before prophethood was woven with ultimate wisdom. When he turned 8, he moved to the house of his uncle Abu Talib. This was the place where he found the greatest amount of love and care in his entire life. Yet, despite this abundance of affection, living in an uncle's house is not the same as being in one's parental home. A child might hesitate to ask his uncle and aunt for what he wants, unlike asking his own parents. This feeling alone was enough to hold him back from many things he desired. Furthermore, it was not always a household. Many times, they would leave the dining table without feeling full. So, he experienced the food of poverty from an early age. Despite this, his uncle and aunt made him feel a true sense of belonging and treated him like one of their own children. Abu Talib never went anywhere without taking him along. He would never leave him or let him out of his sight. He would sometimes speak to him as a friend, and if he was missing from the table, Abu Talib would say, "Where is Muhammad? Go and call him." The Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, was not like other children. He would never begin eating before the elders, and he was deeply grateful and deeply perceptive. When he saw his uncle's financial struggle in supporting the household, he refused to spend his days merely playing like other young ones. He wanted to work and help the family, so he went to his uncle and asked to herd his sheep. By doing this, Abu Talib wouldn't need to hire a shepherd. He was an early request for a child of his age. Although His uncle and aunt hated for him to spend long hours under the scorching desert sun. He somehow convinced them and began herding. From this profession, which requires immense patience, he learned endurance and responsibility. He learned how to guard what was entrusted to him. He also saw it as an opportunity to escape the city's noise, spending nights alone, contemplating the stars and the wonders of creation. Send prayers, Abu Muhammad.